Dr. Cale Morgan sat alone in his small lab on Arivos 9, a quiet human colony orbiting a huge gas giant named Helion. Outside his window, the planet's swirling clouds glowed with blue and gold storms lighting up the dark. Cale often stared at it when he needed to think. It made him feel both small and inspired, a reminder of how far humans had come. He was a xenolinguist, a specialist in alien languages and unknown signals. His job was to study mysterious transmissions picked up by deep space satellites. Most of the time, he found nothing but static or natural radiation bursts. Still, he believed one day he would find something truly new, proof that someone out there wanted to talk. That day began like any other. Cale sipped cold tea, scanning long columns of data. The air hummed softly with the sound of machines. Then the lab's drone door chimed. A small courier drone floated in, silver and quiet. It dropped a sealed package on his desk. Cale frowned. He wasn't expecting any delivery. The label had no sender name, only a line of coordinates written in soft blue text. Source: unregistered. Origin: outer Helion orbit. Cale blinked. Outer Helion orbit? Nothing existed there except storms and the occasional mining satellite. He opened the box. Inside was a sacking, but not an ordinary one. It shimmered like liquid glass, woven with threads that changed color under the lab's light. Sometimes it looked silver, sometimes gold, and when he tilted it, faint streaks of purple ran across it like starlight. It was beautiful and strange. Then he noticed something else, the faintest sound like a whisper coming from within. He leaned closer and his heart gave a small jump. It sounded like a voice. A woman's voice. Please, take them off. Cale froze. He played the audio again on his recorder. Nothing. Silence. But when he leaned in to listen directly to the sack, the whisper came again. Soft, tired, almost like a plea. Please, take them off. He pulled back, breath catching. The sound was not coming from any speaker. It came from inside the sack. For a long minute, he just sat there, unsure what to do. His scientific mind told him to record everything, to keep calm, to analyze before touching anything. But his curiosity, that deep, restless human curiosity, began to grow. Who sent this? What did take them off mean? He decided to scan it first. He placed the sack on a flat scanner pad and activated the machine. Blue light passed through it, and his monitor filled with readings. The sack wasn't made of any material in the station's database. It seemed half organic, half energy-based, and deep inside, the scanner showed movement, small shapes like rings or loops. Cale frowned. Rings. He switched the scanner to biological mode, expecting to see nothing. But the monitor blinked red. Life form detected. That didn't make sense. How could something alive be inside a sealed sack floating in space? Cale rubbed his temples. His first thought was that it might be a message capsule from another civilization, a kind of alien time capsule. Humans had sent many of those themselves. But why the whisper? Why the words "take them off"? He sat back, staring at the shimmering fabric. The way it shifted colors almost felt like it was breathing. Outside the window, Helion's lightning flashed again, sending blue light across the lab. Kyle sighed. All right, he murmured. Let's see what you are. He gently loosened the seal. The material felt warm to the touch, like living skin. As he untied the top, a faint glow spilled out. Not bright, just a soft golden hue, as if light itself had been folded inside. When he finally opened it, he saw what looked like metal bands, dozens of them, each one thin and carved with tiny symbols that curved in graceful patterns. They weren't rusty or old. They looked new, untouched by time. Cale reached out and picked one up. It was light, almost weightless, yet it hummed faintly in his hand. The moment he touched it, his lab lights dimmed for half a second. The air seemed to vibrate softly, like a sound too deep for the ear to hear. He placed the band on the table and stared at it. Please don't explode, he muttered nervously. Of course it didn't, it simply sat there glowing slightly. Cale took out his magnifier lens and looked closer. The carvings on it weren't just decoration, they were structured. Repeated sequences, balanced lines, even small variations that reminded him of writing. Language, he whispered. Someone wrote this. He ran the scanner again, trying to translate the patterns. The computer recognized repeating frequencies. It was indeed a language, but unlike any human or known alien script. It carried something deeper, almost like emotion built into the pattern. The more he studied, the more he felt it wasn't random. It was alive. Then, as he leaned closer, his heartbeat quickened. The glowing lines along the metal began to shift, in rhythm with his pulse. He froze. That was impossible. He checked his biometric sensors. Yes, his pulse was 72. The glowing pattern on the band flashed at exactly the same rate. Cale held his breath. The light slowed down. His heart slowed too. It was sinking with him. He whispered, "What are you?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then the faint whispering voice returned, softer now but clearer. It came from everywhere, the walls, the air, his instruments. "You heard us." Cale jumped to his feet. "Who said that?" No answer. Only the hum of the band on his desk glowing faintly in time with his heart. He sat back down slowly. His curiosity now burned stronger than his fear. He turned the band over in his hand, studying every line, every etching. The script seemed to pulse with tiny flickers of light, forming patterns that almost looked like faces or maybe eyes. "Take them off," he murmured. "Take what off?" "The sack, the bands?" He looked again at the sack. Inside were many more bands of at least 30 or 40, all motionless, all waiting. Cale opened his recording log. "Note," he said quietly. "An unmarked delivery arrived today. Origin uncertain. Contained an unidentified material sack. Inside multiple objects resembling metallic bands, possibly storage devices. Possible connection to known extinct species. Further testing required." He paused, then added softly, "Audio anomaly detected." Voice heard, feminine in tone. Repeated phrase, "Please take them off." Unclear meaning. He saved the file and leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the glowing ring. The lab lights flickered once more, but he didn't notice. His mind raced with theories. Maybe the sack was a preservation unit. Maybe these bands held memories. Maybe each one contained data, a kind of message. Or maybe, just maybe, they contained something more. Outside, a storm raged across Helion's atmosphere. The planet's lightning danced like silent fireworks reflected in Cale's eyes. He didn't know it yet, but his simple act of curiosity, opening that sack, had awakened something that had waited centuries to be heard. As he cleaned his desk for the night, he noticed something strange. The band he had examined had moved slightly. Not much, just a few millimeters. But enough that its glowing symbols now formed a different pattern. He frowned. He hadn't touched it since he set it down. He stared for a long time, unsure whether to feel afraid or amazed. Finally, he whispered, "I'll study you tomorrow." But as he turned off the lights and prepared to leave, he heard it one last time. Faint, almost like a sigh carried by the air. "Thank you." Cale froze by the door. The lab was dark, the only light coming from the soft glow of the bands inside the open sack. They pulsed slowly, like many small hearts beating together. He smiled nervously. "You're welcome," he said softly, though he wasn't sure who or what he was talking to. When the door closed behind him, the sack shimmered in the dark. One of the bands twitched slightly as if stretching after a long sleep. Then the whisper returned, too faint for human ears. "He heard us." Dr. Cale Morgan woke up later than usual the next morning. His dreams had been strange, filled with glowing symbols, whispers, and the feeling of being watched by gentle eyes. When he opened his eyes, the room felt unusually quiet. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. Then he remembered the sack, the bands, the voice that had said, "Please, take them off." He jumped out of bed and hurried back to his lab. The corridor lights flickered as he passed, reacting to his quick steps. Erevos 9's automated systems greeted him softly, but he ignored them. He wanted to see if everything had been real or just his imagination. When he entered the lab, the sight waiting for him made his breath catch. The sack still sat on the desk, glowing faintly, and the metallic bands inside were arranged differently than before. They now formed a circular pattern as if someone or something had placed them that way. Cale walked closer, heart beating fast. "I didn't leave them like that," he whispered. He checked the lab's security logs. No one had entered. No motion detected. No temperature change. The only thing recorded was a faint energy spike around 0314 local time. It was small, but clearly not from any known source. He leaned on the table and stared at the bands. They seemed harmless and beautiful even, but something about them felt alive, aware. He could almost feel them watching him back. "Okay," he said to himself, forcing a calm tone. "We're going to test this scientifically." He put on his neural headband, a small silver device that read brainwaves, and connected it to his scanner. The plan was simple. Project a small amount of thought energy toward one of the bands to see if it reacted. The moment the scanner activated, the lights dimmed again. His screen filled with waves of static, then clear rhythmic pulses. The machine translated them into sounds, faint whispers layered together like hundreds of people speaking at once. It was too much for the computer to handle. Cale quickly adjusted the settings, isolating one signal. The whisper grew clearer. A woman's voice again, soft, echoing, and sad. "You opened the gate." Kyle froze. "Who are you?" For a moment there was silence. Then the reply came slow and calm. "We are the Oralis." The name sounded familiar. Cale quickly searched his database. After a few seconds, a result appeared. Oralis, mythic race from the Outer Archive, believed extinct for 10,000 years. Known only from fragments of ancient symbols found on derelict moons. His heart raced. Extinct? Yet here they were, speaking to him. He took a deep breath and spoke again. "If you are real, then what are these bands?" The reply came in waves, not just words, but emotion, as if feelings were mixed into the sound. "They are what remains of us. Our minds, our memories, our voices. The bands are our vessels. We cannot leave them, not without help." Kyle's throat felt dry. He realized what "take them off" had meant. The bands weren't tools and they were prisons. Or perhaps coffins for minds that had survived long after their bodies had perished. He asked quietly, "Who trapped you?" But the voice didn't answer. Instead, it whispered a different phrase full of longing. "You heard us." "That is enough." The signal faded away. Kyle sat still for a long time, trying to understand. If this was true, the sack contained not machines, but living consciousness, intelligent beings preserved in some kind of memory metal. His mind filled with questions. Who sent the sack? Why him? How were the Oralis reaching him through sound? He began to record everything. His hands shook as he spoke into the log. "Day 2, he said softly. "The objects communicate through audio and possibly empathic resonance. They respond to thought patterns. Species identified themselves as Oralis. Description matches long-extinct race. They claim to be conscious, stored within these bands." He stopped recording for a moment and stared at the glowing symbols. "If this is true," he whispered, "then they've been alive for thousands of years?" He turned to his computer and started decoding the symbol patterns again. Hours passed. The light outside changed from pale blue to dark indigo as the colony rotated above the giant planet. The storm clouds of Helion flashed far below like silent thunder. Then something strange happened. As he worked, he began to hear more voices, not through the speakers and directly in his mind. They weren't loud or frightening. They were calm, almost musical. Some sounded curious, others shy. Each had a different tone, like a chorus of individuals waking from a long sleep. He listens. "Human heart strong. He can open us. Hope returns." Cale pressed his hands to his temples. He wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but somehow the voices didn't hurt or confuse him. They felt warm, like distant memories of kindness. He spoke softly. "I hear you. But how can I help?" A voice, and clearer than the rest, replied from the band nearest to him. "You carry what we lost, emotion, connection. You are resonance. You can bridge it." "Bridge," Cale repeated. "Bridge what?" "The gap between silence and sound. Between stillness and life." Then all the bands pulsed at once, filling the room with a low hum. The light spread like water, turning the air golden. Cale's computer beeped. New data appeared on his screen. Patterns, numbers, and fragments of visual shapes began to form. He realized the Oralis were showing him something. Memories, maybe. He saw faint images, tall beings made of light and sound, walking in crystal halls, singing harmonies that shimmered in the air. He saw stars, ships made of music, and then darkness, silence, as everything faded. The image vanished, leaving Cale speechless. He whispered, "You're showing me your past." "We remember through you," the voices said softly. Days passed. Kyle spent every waking hour in the lab, speaking to the Oralis. He didn't tell the station authorities, not yet. He wanted to understand first. Each conversation revealed more. He learned that the Oralis had once been travelers among the stars, using frequencies and emotion as energy. But something happened, a disaster they wouldn't describe. They had preserved their minds inside the metallic bands, hoping someone in the future could restore them. For centuries, they drifted in silence until a faint human signal reached them. They followed it. They found Earth's explorers, learned their language, and sent the sack to the one human whose research aligned perfectly with their frequencies, Dr. Cale Morgan. They had chosen him. At first, Cale couldn't believe it. Why me? I'm just a linguist. There are scientists far smarter than I am. Because you listen, one voice replied. Others hear noise. You hear meaning. That answer stayed with him. Every night the whispers became clearer. The bands began glowing in patterns that matched human brainwaves. Kyle realized they were slowly adapting, syncing to his emotions, learning from his thoughts. They didn't just want communication. They wanted connection. Sometimes he would talk to them about human life, cities on Earth, the taste of food, music, laughter. They would respond with quiet wonder. Sound that makes joy. We remember this. Water on skin. We remember rain. You live as we once did. It moved Kyle deeply. These beings, trapped for millennia, longed for the simplest experiences humans took for granted. And he, a lonely scientist on a distant world, was the only one hearing their voices. One evening, as the storms on Helion glowed bright orange, Kyle sat beside the sack, exhausted but content. The lab was silent except for the gentle pulse of light from the bands. Then a new sound filled the air, a tone unlike the others. It was harmonious, peaceful, like a lullaby sung by 1,000 voices. He felt warmth on his hand. When he looked down, one of the bands had rolled toward him and touched his fingers. The metal felt alive, soft and warm like skin. Then a gentle female voice spoke, clear and kind. Cale Morgan. Unshackler, he blinked. Unshackler? You can free us. Not by force, by heart. Before he could respond, the band released his hand and went still. The light faded to a soft blue glow. Cale sat back, breathless. His mind buzzed with wonder and disbelief. The Oralis believed he could set them free, but how? He looked around the room at the dozens of bands resting quietly inside the shimmering sack. They were waiting, trusting, Cale whispered. If there's a way, I'll find it. Outside, the storms of Helion rolled endlessly. Inside the quiet lab, tiny pulses of light answered him one by one, in rhythm with his heartbeat. And somewhere, deep within the golden glow of the sack, the Oralis whispered a single phrase that only the sensors caught. Hope breathes again. Dr. Cale Morgan had not slept properly for 3 days. The sack still rested on his desk, glowing softly like a small star. Inside it, the metallic bands hummed in gentle rhythm, responding to his presence. They seemed calm now, as if waiting for him to take the next step. He stared at them, tired but determined. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the Oralis whispering to him, voices full of patience, warmth, and hope. Unshackler, they called him. You can free us. Cale didn't know how. He had run every test, every scan, and still couldn't find a physical switch, no button, no code to release them. The bands were alive, yet trapped. A paradox of technology and consciousness. He paced around the lab, thinking aloud. You said not by force. By heart, what does that mean? I can't feel you out of there. The reply came, faint but clear, through the lab's speakers. You already do. Kyle stopped. He looked at the glowing bands again, realizing something simple but profound. Every time he had spoken with them, every time he had felt empathy or wonder, their light grew stronger. It wasn't the machines connecting to them, it was him. His emotions, his human essence. He sat down slowly, his mind racing. If connection is the key, maybe I've been using the wrong language. That evening, Cale dimmed the lights in his lab until the only glow came from the sack. He removed his neural headband and instead placed his hand directly on one of the bands. I don't have the answers, he said softly, but if you trust me, I'll try to listen with more than my mind. He closed his eyes and focused on his heartbeat. He remembered moments from his life, the first time he saw Earth from space, the laughter of his little sister before he left for Erebos 9, the feeling of standing under rain after a long, dry season. All those human emotions, joy, loss, curiosity, love, flowed through him naturally. As he did, the band beneath his hand grew warmer. Then, the whispers began, hundreds of voices joining in quiet harmony. It wasn't frightening anymore. It sounded like a song without words, a melody made of light and thought. Kale felt something shift deep inside him as if his heart was answering their call. Suddenly, the lab's scanners lit up. Energy readings spiked far beyond normal levels, yet everything felt peaceful. The golden light from the sack spread outward, filling the room with soft waves. Kyle opened his eyes. The bands were floating, rising gently into the air. The shimmering symbols on them began to move in flowing patterns like a dance of stars. "Kyle Morgan," said the same calm female voice he had heard before. "You are resonance. Your kind carries what we forgot, empathy." He swallowed hard. "I'm just one human. I don't even understand what I'm doing. You feel. That is enough." The glow became brighter, and Kyle could sense emotions, gratitude, peace, hope, flooding through him. The Oralis were linking their consciousness with his, borrowing his emotional frequency to stabilize themselves. The air vibrated with harmony. Then, one by one, the bands began to dissolve, not breaking apart but transforming into light, pure and gentle. Each pulse of light released a faint sound like a sigh of relief. Kyle realized it then. The sack wasn't a container of metal. It was a cocoon, and he was helping them emerge. He whispered, "You're free." "Aren't you?" "We are becoming," the voices said in unison. After silence, there is sound again. The room filled with golden light so bright that Kyle had to cover his eyes. When he looked again, he saw figures, tall, graceful, and made entirely of radiance and sound. They shimmered like sunlight passing through glass. They weren't solid, yet their presence filled the room with warmth. One of them stepped closer. The figure's light pulsed softly with every word. "We are the Oralis once lost to silence. You have given us voice again." Kale could hardly speak. "I didn't. I just listened." "And that is why you succeeded," said the figure. "Many heard us over the ages. None understood. Only humans carried enough heart to hear beyond the noise." Kyle felt a tear slip down his cheek. The being reached out, not touching him physically, but brushing against his mind like a comforting thought. He felt peace as if standing in sunlight after a long night. Around him, the other Oralis moved gracefully, forming patterns of light that filled the air. They sang without words, a melody that carried joy, memory, and freedom. The sack on the desk dissolved completely, its fabric turning into golden dust. Kale's scanners recorded impossible readings, pure energy signatures woven with data, emotion, and sound. He didn't even bother to analyze it. He simply watched, smiling softly. "Where will you go?" he asked. The first Oralis tilted its head slightly, its form shimmering. "To the stars. To the empty places where sound does not reach. We will fill them again with song." Kale nodded. "Then maybe, one day I'll hear you again. You will. Our frequencies will always echo through your kind. You opened the gate, the silence is broken." The golden light grew brighter one last time. The figures rose through the lab ceiling, passing through matter as if it were air. Outside in the blackness of space, they stretched across the void like ribbons of light, swirling around the gas giant below. From the colony's observation towers, people looked up in wonder as the stormy clouds of helium reflected the glow. For the first time, the planet's lightning turned soft gold instead of blue. No one could explain what they saw, but Kale knew. He watched from the window as the lights faded into the horizon, and then silence. Days later, Kale's lab was quiet again. The sack was gone. The instruments were back to normal. But he could still feel traces of their presence, a faint hum in the air like distant music. He sent a report to Earth Command, describing the discovery without mentioning the voices. He knew they wouldn't believe him, not yet. The data alone would keep scientists busy for years. But to Kale, the truth was simple. The Oralis were free, and humanity had helped them take their first breath of existence again. Sometimes, when he worked late, he would pause and listen carefully. If the room was silent enough, he could still hear a soft echo. A song that wasn't from any speaker. "Thank you, human." Weeks passed and Kale returned to his regular duties. But he had changed. Every time he looked at Helion's golden storms, he remembered that night and the light, the warmth, the feeling that being human meant something powerful. He started a new project called the Resonance Initiative, focused on studying emotional frequencies and communication. His goal was simple: to teach others how to listen beyond logic, People called him eccentric, but Kyle didn't mind. He had seen what real listening could do. He had witnessed empathy turn into energy. One day, during a quiet shift, the lab's communication array flickered to life by itself. The monitor showed static at first, then a faint pattern, waves of golden light. Kyle smiled and leaned forward. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. Through the static came a faint musical tone, and a single word and together. Then the signal faded again, leaving him surrounded by soft golden glow. Kale laughed quietly to himself. He didn't know if anyone else would ever understand what happened on Erebos 9, but he didn't need them to, because he did. He had seen proof that even across galaxies, across silence and time, the simplest human gift, empathy, could bring life where there had only been echoes. And in that truth, humanity itself shone brighter than any star.